What's up, Flaniverse? We're back for another Sunday night football slate. Another slate with the Vikings on primetime. Love to see that. That one went pretty well for us. I think last week, Vikings at Bears kind of went as planned. Not exactly, because I thought the Vikings might just put up a lot of points, and that didn't happen for 3/4 of the game. But ultimately, a lot of things went right there. JJ McCarthy ended up having a good game. Justin Jefferson was fine. Bears defense did well. Hopefully, we're gonna get some things right on this one. After I'd say a pretty good season overall so far. I've been happy with the way things have gone, except I don't know about you guys, but I got absolutely smashed on Thursday night. That was the worst slate of the season for me by far. That one was brutal. As long as we don't have another one of those, we could be in for another fun night here. Hopefully you guys are having a nice Sunday. I'm having a pretty nice Sunday so far. I thought I was going to get buried by that Jonathan Taylor and Chuba Hubbard scoring touchdowns at the same time. I was like, okay, this is going to knock me down. I'm going to lose all my money here, and somehow I didn't. I'm losing like $50 on DraftKings, but winning like 450 on FanDuel right now. So happy with how the day is going so far. Hopefully we can keep it going tonight on the Sunday Night Football slate. I'm going to be going position by position here, starting with quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses. Take any questions you have at the end. I'll take them as we go. And I'll play around with running the sims at the end of the show as well. So it's the same show as last year, where I'm going to go position by position, talking about all of the factors, the matchups, the usage trends, all of that. And then at the end, I'm just going to build my lineups right here on the show. So it's just a little addition at the end of the show where I'm doing run the sims here. Good to see all of you here. Anthony, I didn't realize that you're a Broncos fan. I'm sorry that that's not going well for you. What's up, Dan? Good to see you. Yes, please do like the video if you haven't already done so. That helps me out quite a bit. I'm trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. I actually have to update the little scroll bar at the bottom there. I'm up at 4940 or so, but still have a ways to go to get to 6,000. So would appreciate your support if you would subscribe to the channel. Going to get right into it. Actually, one thing before I get into it, because I'm excited about these hats, and you can't really see my hat right now. I'm going to put the banner up on the screen. If you are interested in a Flaniverse hat, all you have to do, use the Flaniverse avatar if it's possible. So on DraftKings FanDuel, use the Flaniverse avatar. On Underdog, you don't need to. Win $1,000 or more in DFS or draft games. Give a social media shout out to myself, Mathology13 or Flaniversity, and then send me your mailing address. I'll send you one of these Flaniverse hats. So if you like the hat as much as I do, that's how you get one. Good to see all of you in here. All right, we are going to get into the slate. Anton says Naylor captain. Maybe. I don't totally hate that. All right, let's get into. Oh, I didn't even. Sorry, I've got the still got it up. I did not mean to keep the hat promo up there. All right, we are going to get back, talk about some quarterbacks here. Not going to start running the sims just yet. I'm gonna look at the projections here. So we've got JJ McCarthy. Actually, I'm going to use run the sims because they have the projected ownership here. So we're going to go to the, where is it? Got to find the Vikings game here. There we go. Atlanta, Minnesota Showdown. Starting with the quarterbacks, and I guess we will start with Michael Penix. Penix projected for 46% flex ownership, 7% captain ownership. He is 9,600. Penix, not much of a running quarterback. He did, I believe, rush for a touchdown last week, if I'm not mistaken. So, showed a little bit there. He's an athletic guy. He can rush. It's just never been something that he's done. There was a little bit of coach speak in the offseason that, suggested that maybe he would run a little bit more. And I kind of thought it was something we might want to factor in. But a lot of people have told me, football guys have told me they're not really expecting that. It's just not really what Penix does. This is a Vikings defense that allowed the 8th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks last year. I think that's going to hold. I think the Vikings just have a really good defense, so I don't think it's a great spot for Penix. Last week, the Falcons ranked 11th in neutral pass rate. So they're passing a fair amount. He's obviously got talented pass catchers. Kyle Pitts looked pretty good last week. They've, of course, got Drake London. Darnell Mooney is back. So certainly things could go well for Michael Penix here. I don't think I'm going to be too off from where the field is. If I come in a little bit low here, it's just going to be because there are other players I like better. He's coming in at 53% total ownership. Again, no real issue with these numbers. I think that they're about right. I suspect, if anything, I probably come in slightly underweight on Penix. I'm also a Vikings homer. For anybody who does not know, Vikings fan. I didn't wear my Vikings gear today because I forgot to wear it last week, and then the Vikings won. So I gotta continue the trend of not wearing the Viking stuff until they lose a game. Then I can switch back into my Viking stuff. This is a good note. from Zell Sledge. Van Ginkel and Harrison Smith out for this game. That is tough for sure. Van Ginkel, man, that guy is he's gonna like get 6 pick sixes one of these years. It's a good note that the Vikings are missing some of their defensive players. I still think it's just going to be a really strong defense, and it's a home game for the Vikings, so tough spot for Penix. But again, I think 53% ownership is about right. I think that I'm going to have him stacked regardless of where I have him in my lineups. Again, not much of a runner. He ran for like 21 yards, I want to say, last week. But for his career, like 5 rushing yards per game, just not much of a runner. So I'm going to have him stacked up regardless of where he is in the lineup. You can certainly include Bijan Robinson as one of his stacking partners. And then when I have Penix in the captain spot, I am going to, all right, if I were using an optimizer, I would require 2 pass catchers, at least 2 pass catchers in the flex. Because I'm using sims, I'm not going to force it. I'm going to let the sims tell me what's right based on their play-by-play sims. But if I were using an optimizer, I would require multiple pass catchers in the flex. And again, Bijan Robinson would be one that I would include there. When you say Bryce Young threw a laser to Renfro, is that another Renfro touchdown or just a laser midfield? All right. I think that's it on Michael Penix. No other real notes there. And then JJ McCarthy, 9,400, projected for 54% flex ownership, 14% captain ownership. So he's getting a little bit more than Michael Penix. It's a bit much, but I think I'm willing to play that much JJ McCarthy. I think he projects a little bit better than Penix. It's a little bit of a it's a better matchup for JJ McCarthy than Penix. I'm trying to find a different tab where I have notes here. Falcons defense gave up the 3rd most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks last year. So it was a really strong matchup for quarterbacks last year. I think that's going to continue. In week 1, the Vikings did not pass much. They were ranked 30th in neutral pass rate. They started passing obviously in the 4th quarter when they needed to, because they were down quite a bit. But yeah, they ranked 30th in neutral pass rate. So I don't think that they are necessarily set up to be much of a passing team. But I also think that might have been just because it was JJ McCarthy's first game. So Kevin O'Connell kind of giving him a chance to get comfortable. And then we saw him get comfortable and he was great at the end. So it wouldn't surprise me if they do pass a little bit more earlier on now that he has a game under him, more comfortable with leading the offense in the NFL. So I do think they're probably going to pass a little bit more this week than they did last week. Remains to be seen. But yeah, I like JJ McCarthy. He's certainly a capable runner. He showed it last week. I think it was pretty close to breaking off another big run in that game early on in the first half, if I'm remembering right. That was that game where he got tripped up. I guess it's his only game in the NFL. He got tripped up as he was about to break off a big run, I think. And then he had, of course, the big rushing touchdown at the end. So I think it's pretty promising that JJ McCarthy is going to run a bit in the NFL. I saw on pick 6, he has a rushing prop of like 18.5. So still the expectation is not that he's going to be like an elite runner. He's going to be running some, but 18.5, obviously not like elite rushing levels. I think I would probably take the over there. I think JJ is just a really good runner, and I think he's going to be running a fair amount. So ultimately, I think this 64% is a number that I'm comfortable with. I don't think I'd want to get over this number for JJ McCarthy. Again, there's just a lot of players that I like on this slate. It's a pretty condensed slate in general. So I don't know that I'm going to get more than 64% of JJ McCarthy, but I'm pretty comfortable getting to about these numbers: 54% in the flex, 14% captain. And he is... I think I'm going to require a pass catcher with JJ McCarthy, regardless of where he's in the lineup. I'm not sure that I would require 2 when I have him in the captain spot, like I do with true statue quarterbacks, because I think he might have more rushing upside than we're giving him credit for. I also think you can include Aaron Jones as a pass catcher with JJ McCarthy, clearly very involved in the passing game. But yeah, I think that's all my notes on quarterback. I like them both. I think I'm not really going to let the quarterbacks beat me either way here. I think I'm going to be pretty close to the field on both quarterbacks, and I will be generally stacking them both up. All right. Moving on to running backs. So on the Atlanta side, pretty interesting, two pretty interesting options on Atlanta. So you've got Bijan Robinson, 26% projected flex ownership, 21% captain ownership. Pretty interesting to see that he's getting, almost equal flex and captain ownership. He's obviously a strong play. He's 12,000, so very expensive, but he has a great role in the Falcons offense here. show the Falcons from last week. Bajan 12 carries to Tyler Allgeier's 10, so a little bit better in the got a little bit more of the work in the running game, but then also had 7 targets. So that's pretty important on a PPR site. Those 7 targets really do add up. 22.8 expected fantasy points last week for Bajan Robinson. He just has an awesome role, one of the better running back roles in the NFL. So I think the ownership here is probably warranted. 47% total ownership. I think I like the split here actually, where he is getting a lot at captain, and then not a ton at flex. I mean, just 26% at flex does not seem like a lot. That seems kind of in line where I'd like to be with Bajan Robinson. I think like he could go off in a big way and be the captain that you need. But in the flex, I mean, he's so expensive. There's a lot of other players that I like. I don't know. It's I think these are fair numbers. I don't know. I don't think he's going to be breaking making or breaking the slate for me. I think about 47% total ownership seems fine. Actually, let me pull up Roto Grinders also. I want to see what they have for the ownership here. So they have him at 10% captain ownership. Yeah, they have him at just 10% captain ownership and 38% flex ownership. So that's more like in line with what I normally would expect. I'll be curious to kind of monitor which of these ends up being closer. Like these are numbers that are closer to just what I expect to see at Roto Grinders. If these numbers do hold here, I think I'd like a little bit more than the 10% of captain. I actually think he's a fairly strong captain play if he does come in at 10%. Probably around 15 to 20% Bajan at captain is a number that I would be comfortable with. While we're here, I'm also going to look at the captain and flex ownership of the quarterbacks, since we were just looking at them. They've got JJ at 11% captain ownership. Not too bad. And then Penix at 10%. At flex, they've got JJ at 43%. So they actually have JJ at significantly lower ownership than Run the Sims has it. At this ownership, I'd be pretty interested. They've got about 54% total ownership. Penix at just around 50%. So a little bit lower, particularly for JJ here. That would make me very interested. Ultimately, I think Bajan is you kind of know what you're getting with Bajan, right? He's going to be involved in both the running game and the passing game. I think he is a fairly strong play if you can pay up there. If he makes sense in your lineup, certainly play some Bajan. It would be a very risky fade. It's not a particularly great spot against the Vikings. They have a tough defense. Vikings, let's see, last year, 4th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs was one of the tougher spots for running backs. And then you have Tyler Allgeier also. So that's where it's he's 3,000. Pretty nice value on Tyler Allgeier. Projected for, so Run the Sims has him at 37% flex ownership, 3% captain ownership. At RG, we've got Allgeier at 23% flex ownership. So pretty big difference in the ownership across the industry. They've got him at 5% flex ownership. Or wait, is this? Yeah, 5% flex ownership, or sorry, captain ownership. So generally, wide range of outcomes for Tyler Allgeier's ownership here, but he's one of the better projected plays on the slate, point per dollar plays on the slate. And if you look at his usage last week, I mean, he only played 25% of the snaps, but he had 10 rushing attempts in those snaps. Didn't have any targets, ran 10% of the routes. Kind of the role you expect from Tyler Allgeier. Like he's going to get a fair amount of work. Could get some goal line work, could score some touchdowns. 7 expected fantasy points last week. Tough matchup, but at 3,000, like kind of a reasonable floor. Like if he gets 10 carries, I mean, he's going to score some fantasy points most likely, and he could score a touchdown. So I do like the range of outcomes for Tyler Allgeier. I don't know that I don't like him enough to play 40%. If he did come in at these numbers, I would certainly want to be under the field. But if he came in closer to the Roto Grinders numbers, which are a bit lower, I think those are totally fair. I think I'd like to be in the 25 to 30% total ownership on Tyler Allgeier, and primarily in the flex. I don't think he's a particularly good captain play. Just pretty unlikely, I think, to score. He would probably need to score 2 touchdowns to really pay off as a captain, and I don't think that is particularly likely. So yeah, would prefer him in the flex. Although as I'm saying this, I'm like, man, I really like Jordan Mason at captain, and maybe that's just a bias of mine because they actually didn't have that different in terms of workload last week. Mason's was a little bit better, but yeah, I think I'm going to be probably not playing a ton of Tyler Algier at captain if I were using an optimizer. And then on the Viking side, you have, I mean, last week it was just Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones, kind of as we anticipated. We got some surprises last week, but from the Vikings, we really didn't get any big surprises. They were used exactly as expected. Aaron Jones last week played 31% of this. Actually, I shouldn't say exactly as expected because Jordan Mason 58% of the snaps. Maybe a bit of a surprise there, but in terms of the how they were used, 15 carries for Jordan Mason, 8 for Aaron Jones. But then it was Aaron Jones who ran 37.5% of the routes, had 3 targets. Jordan Mason ran 25% of the routes, had 1 target. So ultimately, I'd say they were used kind of how we expected, where Aaron Jones is more of the passing game back, who's also somewhat involved as a runner. And then Jordan Mason is primarily the running down back, who was occasionally used as a passer. Ultimately, Aaron Jones, 11 expected fantasy points last week. Of course, scored that long passing touchdown. That was pretty awesome. 9.4 expected fantasy points for Jordan Mason last week. I think this could be a game where they are better set up to establish it. So I actually really like both of these Vikings running backs. And again, there's a possibility that I'm a little bit biased here because I'm a Vikings fan, but I'm excited about them. I think this is the spot to target the Vikings running backs. And if you look at the ownership here, 33% flex ownership to Jordan Mason, 6% at captain, 31% to Aaron Jones in the flex, 3% at captain. I actually really like both of those numbers. I think this 3% at captain for Aaron Jones particularly stands out because, last week he didn't have that incredible of a game outside of the long touchdown. Maybe, it was a little bit worrisome for some people that he was not involved as much as a runner. But the Vikings also were just not able to sustain drives last week. For 3 quarters of the game, the offense was just doing nothing. So I think it could look a little bit better if they're just able to move the ball down the field more. You're going to see more usage, I think, for both of the running backs, and that includes Aaron Jones as a runner also. So I'm pretty excited to play both of these Vikings running backs at pretty reasonable ownership here. The Falcons defense last year allowed the 10th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs. They also were particularly allowed fantasy points through the air. They allowed the second most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game through the air to running backs, which is obviously more promising for Aaron Jones than Jordan Mason. But I think that they're both fantastic plays. I do want to look at the ownership over at RG also. So they have, I think it's Aaron Jones, 7% captain ownership. So it is a bit more at RG. And then they have Jordan Mason. Where is he? Here he is. 8%. So those numbers have actually come up a little bit from when I looked at it this morning. At those numbers, I would be less excited to play them. If they're at 3%, that's a pretty big difference from 7 to 8%. But I still think fine plays at those ownerships. And then, 33 and 31% in the flex. RG has Aaron Jones at 32%, Jordan Mason 30%. So a little bit lower. I think both of those are pretty strong numbers. And I particularly like the idea of playing them together. I often get the question, can you play these running backs on the same team? Actually, it looks like I just got it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I would. I think this is a game where, they're both priced up a little bit. We don't have like a really cheap option, but we also don't have 10,000, 11,000 running back. So, the total salary on these two is just around 14,000. We could get a ton of fantasy points, I think, out of the running backs. Totally willing to play them together. I think this could be, again, a game where the Vikings are just able to move the ball a lot better than they were last week against a worse defense this week with a quarterback who maybe doesn't have the jitters anymore to start the game. So I like the idea of playing these quarterbacks together, even if one of them is in the flex. I would love to play Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason together. And then I'm not going to go to Ty Chandler again. I don't think he's going to be involved, or maybe actually looks like he's out for this game. Xavier Scott also has no projection. I don't think we have to worry about any tertiary running back options on either team. It's just kind of two running backs who get all the work for both teams. All right, let's move on to receivers. All right, on the receiver side, let me scroll back up. So I really like the receivers on both teams, and I like a range of receivers on both teams, which is part of the reason that I'm probably not going to get as much of Penix if he is this high. Maybe Bajan, I'm a little bit less, because I think the receiving options are pretty strong, especially the contrarian options. Well, first of all, I guess I should start with Drake London, because Drake London, so 31% flex ownership, 13% captain ownership. I actually really like Drake London here. And actually, let me pull up the reason. So if we look at last year, the weeks with Michael Penix were week 16, 17, and 18, with Penix as the starting quarterback. Oh, I'm in the advanced rushing. That's not what I meant to do. This is what I meant to do. I'm going to go back here. 16, 17, 18. Look who led the NFL in receiving yards over that 3-game stretch. Drake London, 352 receiving yards, 39% air yard share in the final 3 weeks of 2024. That's massive. I mean, we did have Darnell Mooney was out for one of those games, but just look at the difference there. Drake London was just fed the ball in those games, which was a little bit of a surprise to me. I think a lot of people kind of thought that Michael Penix would be good for Darnell Mooney for some of those deep passes, but ultimately it was Drake London who was getting fed the ball in those games with Michael Penix. It's a weird spot here for the Falcons. Actually, let me pull up this year. I'm going to pull up just last week's receiving game for the Falcons. So looking at the route participation last week, it was actually Casey Washington led the Falcons in route participation last week. Now he's out with a concussion. And now we have Darnell Mooney returning. It's sort of a weird receiving core here for the Falcons. But I think Drake London probably sees more routes this week. He was questionable. He was actually hurt this week in practice. There was some question about whether he was going to play. I think he's healthy enough that he's just fine. He's going to play and probably run a fair number of routes. I like Drake London quite a bit. He is one of my favorite captain options on the slate. I think I listed out my favorite captains on the DraftKings slate as Justin Jefferson, Drake London, and Aaron Jones. I think are all really strong plays. So I particularly like Drake London at captain. I think he's a totally fine flex play as well. 31%. I think I'll probably be right there with Drake London. Not going to be too different from these numbers, but I do want to point out that 13% at captain is a number that I really like on Drake London. He has been fed by Michael Penix so far, just a really talented receiver who could have double-digit receptions, and it wouldn't surprise anybody. Then you have Darnell Mooney, who again did not play last week, and now I'm blanking on what the injury was. Give me one second here. Who's starting? Parker Romo is starting for. Is the kicker tonight for the Falcons. All right. Shoulders injuries for both of them, actually, for Darnell Mooney and Drake London. I don't know. The fact that he didn't play last week, maybe they ease him in a little bit here and he doesn't get quite the full workload. But ultimately, I think Darnell Mooney is a fine play if he's going to be under-owned because he didn't play last week and we haven't seen it yet this year. The concern, of course, is, again, you look at last year's numbers and Darnell Mooney in 2 games, just 16% target share with Michael Penix. He had 119 yards, which is, not terrible. It's 60 yards a game. But he was kind of dwarfed by Drake London last year. I think a totally fine play if he's going to be under-owned. They can certainly just hit on one deep ball and pay off the Darnell Mooney price tag. I think I prefer the Vikings running backs, but they're also getting more ownership. I think these numbers are fine for Darnell Mooney. 25% flex ownership, 2% captain ownership. No real issue with either of those. He's getting 26% at RG. I'm trying to find, as I'm looking through this, I'm trying to think what are spots that I need to get lower on, because there are so many players that I really like on this slate, and I'm going to have to sacrifice somewhere. I think it actually is going to be the quarterbacks. I think I'm going to get a little bit lower. If JJ McCarthy does come in at 68%, I think I'm going to have to come in a little bit under there, because there are so many other plays that I think are just really strong from a game theory perspective, to be a little bit contrarian, not just play the same lineups as everybody else. So I think I probably have to come in a little bit underweight on JJ McCarthy. sadly, and maybe Michael Penix as well. Because Mooney, I think at 25% ownership, I have a hard time saying that that's too much. I think it's a totally fair number on Mooney. And then you have Ray McLeod and Kadarrell Hodge. And again, as noted, Casey Washington is out. Darnell Mooney and Drake London have both been dealing with shoulder injuries. Darnell Mooney missed last week with a shoulder injury. Drake London was questionable all week. It was an actual question: was he going to be able to play tonight with a shoulder injury? So, given all of the injuries, they're pretty thin at receiver here for the Falcons. They've got Ray McLeod and Kadarrell Hodge. I think they're both fine plays. We saw Ray McLeod have some really big weeks last year, particularly at the beginning of the season. Saw some nice usage. He's 5,400, so he's a little bit more expensive than I'd like. I don't want to get too much over this 15% number. I don't think on Ray McLeod. Yeah, it's 15% both places. I think it's a totally fine number. He was, what did he do last week? 82% route participation. Oh, sorry, that's the last year. 77% route participation, 3 targets last week. I don't know that I want to have him at captain. I think he's probably just going to get there through PPR points in general. But if he gets 6 targets, 5 catches for 50 yards, that's totally fine for Ray McLeod at his price. And if he scores a touchdown, you probably want him. So I think Ray McLeod is a fine play. Probably not going to be somebody I'm too far off the field at 15 and 1% in the captain owner and flex ownership. And then Kadarrell Hodge is 1,600. I have some interest in Kadarrell Hodge. He would be one that back in the day when I would name my Neil's Nobodies, he's one that I don't think many people are going to play, that I find kind of intriguing, again, just from the perspective of, okay, he had 17% route participation last week. Now Casey Washington, who led the team in route participation, is out. They get Darnell Mooney back, but they've got 2 starting receivers who are both dealing with shoulder injuries. So at 17% route participation, Kadarrell Hodge would be a fine play at 0 ownership. But then you factor in the injuries to the starters. Wouldn't be that shocking to see either of them limited, or either or both of them limited to some extent tonight. So I do think Kadarrell Hodge is a pretty intriguing contrarian play. And let me look at the ownership at DraftKings. 2.3% flex ownership for Kadarrell Hodge. Yeah, I think that's a number that I want to get on top of. I think that he's just got some upside to him, to his usage. I think we could just see him run a few more routes with Casey Washington out, maybe get a few more targets. Oh no, the bots are back. I forgot to put a timer on to require people to subscribe before they can do this. That's my bad. I did a 15 minutes instead of 5, and it really helped the last Showdown show. So screwed this one up. All right. Yeah, Devin, it's a question. It's certainly a question that he could get less snaps with Mooney back, but also Casey Washington ran 94% of the routes, so that wouldn't really be my expectation. Just given that we actually saw, I don't think Mooney is going to come back and run more than 94% of the routes. So we're actually probably getting back somebody who's going to be running fewer routes than Casey Washington, I think, most likely. So I actually think that we could see an increase in routes for someone here, and it might just be London now runs the most routes on the team. We'll see how it breaks down, but wouldn't be surprising just because of the injuries to both London and Mooney if we just have more opportunities for the other players, either because it's planned that way, that they're just going to let them, they're a little bit limited, the coaches don't want to give them a full workload, or just re-aggravation is always a possibility with in-game injuries. So I think that there are outs there for Kadarrell Hodge, and the baseline is, I'm not super excited to play him at 1,600. If he does run 17% of the routes and gets 1 target, there's a possibility that he scores a touchdown and pays it off. That outcome, though, would not be one where if I knew he was going to run 17% of the routes again, I probably wouldn't want a ton of Kadarrell Hodge. But I think that there's upside there for more usage just because of the injuries to the other receivers on the team. Similar to Ray McLeod, if anything were to happen to London and Mooney, maybe a couple more targets go his way. So I do think that they're pretty intriguing tertiary options on the Falcons receivers. On the Viking side, again, we got Justin Jefferson, and I want to look at the ownership at RG as well. 25% flex, 22% captain ownership for Justin Jefferson. RG has it at 35.5% at flex. and 11% at captain. If he comes in at 11% at captain, that's another just slam dunk. I would want all the Justin Jefferson captain if he comes in at 11%. I would like to be double that, I think. My assumption is that he comes in a little bit higher here, maybe closer to the run the Sims numbers, maybe somewhere in between there. But yeah, I think 20-ish captain ownership for Justin Jefferson is totally fair. I think he's in a great spot here. Again, it's a strong matchup for receivers last year. The Falcons allowed the most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to wide receivers last year. We can look at so here's schedule adjusted fantasy points last year was the best possible matchup for receivers. We can see if it was any better at the end of the year. Still over the last, it got a little bit worse over the final 5 games of the season. It was more middling, so maybe they got a little bit better, but I don't think the expectation is that it's going to be a particularly strong defense. We're not expecting a shadow situation here for Justin Jefferson. Lining up primarily with Mike Hughes. Looks like some strong cornerbacks here on the Falcons. But ultimately, I think Justin Jefferson he's going to win in most matchups and should see a fair amount of usage here. I think he's got a connection with JJ McCarthy. So I like Justin Jefferson quite a bit here. Then we saw Thielen not really do much last week. He didn't run all the routes. Let me pull up the route participation. So we saw actually Jalen Naylor was at 87.5% route participation, Adam Thielen at 62.5% route participation. So we really didn't have, we had maybe sort of a surprise for me, at least, that it was Naylor running more routes than Thielen. I guess not a huge surprise just because Thielen is getting up there in age. But I was really curious who was going to be running from the slot for the Vikings, and it was actually both of them. 43% slot route participation for Jalen Naylor, 40% for Thielen. So they were just splitting the slot usage on Thielen's return. That probably continues to some extent. I think it's really an ownership game with those two. So RG has it at for captain Thielen at 2% projected ownership. I think that's fine. I don't want to get like too high of that. I actually prefer Naylor, I think, at 1% captain ownership. I think he's a little bit more interesting to me than Thielen at captain. And then in the flex, we have Thielen at 15%, Naylor at 12.5%. I think those are pretty good numbers. Again, I would prefer Naylor, but I actually think Thielen, could see more usage than last week. Again, not a particularly great game. He had a pretty bad drop in the middle of that game. The Vikings kind of struggle with drops through 3 quarters. I think for anybody who thought that JJ McCarthy looked bad, which, he didn't look great, to be clear, but they also had like 3 pretty bad drops throughout the first 3 quarters. Was happy to see him get a little bit better there. All right. So I think I like the numbers here for both Thielen and Naylor. Low ownership here, and I think they both have the opportunity to pay this off. I prefer Naylor over Thielen, but I think both are viable. We saw Thielen also scored the 2-point conversion, which I always kind of think if players are getting used for the 2-point conversion, they can certainly be used for short yardage touchdowns also. So I think Thielen is pretty live for a short yardage touchdown at 4,800. Both fairly strong plays. Nobody else of the Vikings receivers that I want to play here. Ty Felton, Tim Jones. I mean, you can see the projections here. If you want to think that they're going to score a touchdown, if you think one of them is likely to, Tim Jones, 12.5% route participation last week. Be my guest. Throw it in, a very large field tournament, but in general, you're really just hoping for a touchdown if you play one of the other Vikings receivers there. All right, I think that does it for the receivers. We can move on to tight ends. Let me check in on chat. Again, apologies for the bots. This was obviously on Sundays, busy day for me, so I spend a little bit less thought on setting up, and I forgot to do it this time. That's right, Skull indeed. Reminder, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. All right, Kyle Pitts, 5,800. Doesn't look like a bad play to me today. I don't know. He looked pretty good last week. Did anybody else watch the tape on Kyle Pitts last week? He looked more athletic, more healthy than he has in a couple of years. He might actually be back this year. we'll see. We'll see how he looks tonight. But he's 5,800 projected for 24% total ownership. Two of that coming at captain. RG has Kyle Pitts at 21% in the flex. 3.5% at captain. I think those are pretty good numbers for Kyle Pitts. I think I like this captain ownership, especially. I think it's kind of a fine spot there. If we look at the schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the tight end position, I don't actually remember where they are. Looks like a middling matchup for tight ends last year against the Vikings. Yeah, I think Kyle Pitts just looked a little bit better last week, and we saw it in the usage also. Oh, I had a super chat. I'm sorry. Let's go. Thanks to your stream yesterday, I used the analyzes tool, analyzes to win a 7-leg on underdog for $1,900 just now. Love to see it, Pack Daddy. Congrats. And appreciate the super chat. Sorry I missed that. That's awesome, man. Always exciting to hit a big one like that. Not a huge amount of money. Yeah, we had people reminding me and letting me know. I totally missed that. Didn't even see it in chat, but appreciate you. All the damn bots. Well done, man. Okay. So yeah, Kyle Pitts, I think we can look at the usage also. So we had last year, week 16 through 18, so the games with Michael Penix. And I'm in the wrong one again. 64% route participation in those final 3 games. 9% target share for Kyle Pitts. He just didn't look healthy last year. I don't know if, from my eyes, and I think most people kind of agreed, he just did not look particularly healthy last year. And then last week, he actually looked healthier, looked like he's kind of the athletic freak that we always think Kyle Pitts is. And he had 81% route participation, 8 targets in that game, 19% target share, looked a little bit better. So I think at 5,800, the price looks a little bit much, but just based on how well he played, I think he actually was a pretty strong play last week. So particularly at captain, I do like Kyle Pitts if he comes in at 2-3%. I think I'm probably going to be, I'd like to be over that number. But he's a fine flex play also. 5,800 again, a reasonable price tag for Kyle Pitts. Charlie Warner, just a classic. You can hope for a touchdown, not expecting much. He's 600, projects for 1 fantasy point. Again, he'll probably score a touchdown at some point this year. Totally fine play from that perspective. On the Vikings, so TJ Hawkinson only 400 more expensive than Kyle Pitts, which doesn't seem like enough to me. But again, I kind of like Kyle Pitts, so I can't be too mad at it. 31% projected ownership for TJ Hawkinson, 2% at captain. Spoiler, we already looked at the schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed last year. Over the last 5 games, Atlanta allowed 8 more than expected to tight ends. So this was a great matchup for tight ends over the final 5 weeks of the season last year. I think Hawkinson looks great. I think this is, Jordan Addison is out. I think Hawkinson should be a focal point of the Vikings offense. Yeah, I think it's a great spot. I want to be definitely over that 2% at captain for Hawkinson. I think 31% at flex is probably fine. Not a number that I feel the need to necessarily get over, but definitely 2% at captain is a number I want to get over for Hawkinson, because this was a tight end funnel matchup last year. And we can hope for the same. Last week, Hawkinson ran, is this last week? Yeah. 75% of the routes had 20% target share. Small sample size. Target share doesn't mean much, but he had 4 targets in the game. Again, I think the Vikings offense could just be a little bit better this week than it was last week. At least I'm hopeful that it will be, just based on how they looked towards the end of the last game, and honestly just how bad they looked through the first 3 quarters. They really can't get any worse than they were. So if they're just able to move the ball a little bit better this week than they did last week, I think the whole offense is going to look a little bit better. Hawkinson should have more opportunities here, and it was pretty strong matchup for tight ends last year. So I think Hawkinson looks great. Josh Oliver, after receiving all that money, 16.7% route participation last week, 1 target. He's very much, you need a touchdown, otherwise probably not getting there at 2,400. I'm not super enthusiastic about 5% going to Josh Oliver. Fine play. He'll score some touchdowns this year, a few times. And if he scores a touchdown, maybe you'll want him. But if he only has 1 target and it's a 5-yard touchdown, I don't even know that that's enough at 2,400. So I'm okay with it, but 5%, I'm not like enthusiastically getting over that number. I think it's just a fine, reasonable number. All right, kickers and defenses. Yeah, I talked about Kadero Hodge a little bit as a player that I like. Actually, I think that Kadero Hodge could be in a good spot here. This is because they're going to be missing Casey Washington, who led the team in route participation last week, is out with a concussion in this game. They're getting Darnell Mooney back, but both Mooney and London dealing with shoulder injuries. So I think the two starters potentially could be a little bit limited. And I like London. I think Mooney's fine. So it's not even a negative on those two, but I think that it kind of increases the positive tail for Kadero Hodge to maybe see some more routes here, see some more target share. So I think as somebody who's just not going to get much ownership, the floor is clearly zero for Kadero Hodge. Again, 17% route participation last week, but I think the ceiling is there, that he's actually just going to be used a little bit more. And I think he's maybe a little bit more likely to hit, at least 5-6 fantasy points than his ownership, the general expectations would be, because I think he maybe has more outs than most wide receivers because the two starters are both limited. And who knows if they're coming in with a plan to have the wide receivers not play full snaps, or there's also the out of an in-game injury. So I think Kadero Hodge looks like a fairly strong play. All right. So I think you're just behind. You're a little bit behind in the. Oh no, you're talking to somebody else. Never mind. Never mind. Okay. Moving on to defenses and kickers. Love them. I think this is another kind of smash spot. So that's kind of why I'm like, I think I probably need to end up being underweight somewhere else, because which is probably going to be Bajan a little bit underweight. I'll probably be a little bit underweight on the quarterbacks. Maybe slightly on like a Mooney, because I think the defenses and kickers just look pretty awesome here. Again, so Parker Romo is the former UFL legend. Parker Romo is the kicker here for Atlanta. Projects for 14% ownership overall. We talked about it on the last stream on Thursday, when again I got absolutely destroyed on that Showdown slate. But we talked about how with the new kickoff rules, there's probably just going to be more kicks this year, probably more field goal attempts, because again they're forcing teams to run the ball out, to not just take the touchback, and then they're forcing the kicking team to kick it in such a way that they're not just going to take the ball at the 25-yard line, because it would again be at the 35-yard line now. Teams are going to be starting with the ball close to field goal range a lot more this year. So even if the offense is not moving that well, they're more likely to get into field goal range. So I'm just expecting generally field goals to be up this year. So I'm going to like the kickers a fair amount, as long until the ownership catches up to new trends. And we'll have to actually monitor, like, are we actually getting more field goals this year? This is, kind of something that we're all speculating. We'll see if it actually happens. But I'm going to like the kickers here if they actually come in at 14% for Parker Romo, and Will Reichert actually at 28%. So that's a fair amount. But I think it's a fair number. I think I'd like to be right around. I mean, we'll see what the Sims give me. They gave me a ton on Thursday. Honestly, the reason I got crushed is because the kickers just missed their field goals on Thursday. We had 3 or 4 missed field goals in that game. They just hit their field goals. Could have gone pretty differently. But I'm going to play a lot of both of the kickers. I think that we're just going to see more field goals this year. And then again, I do like the defenses. The Falcons I don't think they're as good as, well, maybe they are. The Bears defense got crushed today. So maybe I'm overrating the Bears defense a little bit. But they're only 3,600. Again, JJ McCarthy, as much as I love him, as much as I think he's probably pretty good, looked shaky for 3/4 of the game last week. This is still just his second NFL game. The Falcons do have some good veteran cornerbacks. I think that there are ways for the Falcons to do well here. It's tough if the Vikings do run the ball as much as they did last week. Again, they were 30th in neutral pass rate. You really want the team to be throwing it for the defense, like last week when finally they had to start throwing it and JJ threw a pick 6. That's what you're hoping for when you play the defense. But at 3,600, I think that they are a fine option. Now, 23% ownership. I'm less excited then. So part of the reason I loved the Bears was they were coming in at like barely double-digit ownership, and they were only 3,400, and it was a pretty strong defense against quarterback in his first NFL start. So they don't have quite the same appeal as the Bears did. Actually, I want to look at the RG ownership, because I thought it was lower earlier. So we've got the Vikings at 17%, Falcons at 17%. Okay. So both these numbers are actually higher than I think I had seen earlier in the day. I still think I want to be a little bit on top of those numbers, but it does, take away some of my enthusiasm for the defenses when they get a little bit more ownership. I'll probably come in over 17%. I don't know that I'll come in over 23% on the Falcons defense. Kind of in that range feels about right to me. The Vikings defense, I think, is just a really strong defense. They are more expensive. They're 4,400. Again, Michael Penix, this is what his fifth NFL start, I think. So it's not like he has a ton of experience either. And the Vikings are just a really tough defense. So I am excited to play them. It doesn't help that they're missing a couple of their starters, but 23% owned. I came into this thinking I was enthusiastic about it, and now that I'm seeing higher ownership here, it makes me less enthusiastic about it. I still think that they are a totally fine play, but maybe not the slam dunk that I was thinking based on ownership numbers that I saw this morning. They were quite a bit lower. I think these numbers are fine, but not something I'm super enthusiastic about. More like I'll be with the field, which I guess in a way is good because I was looking for places to get under elsewhere so I could get over on the defenses and kickers. And maybe I don't need to get overweight on the defenses if the field is going to be there. Okay. Probably some of you want to look at FanDuel, so I'm just going to very quickly look at FanDuel, and then I'm going to get into making my lineups on the stream. Let me check in with chat. Let's see. Favorite captain, Justin Jefferson, followed by Drake London, followed by, I think, Aaron Jones, although Aaron Jones's captain ownership has come up a little bit. But it would be the stud receivers are my favorites in general, and then probably Aaron Jones third. How much of him being shaky was the play calls not coming in quick enough? Yeah, I mean they were having some struggles. I don't know. Who knows? It was his first game. I don't know if the team was making excuses for him. Justin Jefferson made excuses for him, said it was his fault, the pick six. I don't know to what extent that was real or just like the team supporting their guy after his first NFL start. We'll see. But I'm hopeful that he's going to look a lot better tonight than he did last week. I'm hoping that he's going to look, because he looked awesome in the fourth quarter. I think most people would agree with that. Obviously, they did benefit from one really bad call, so I don't want to say that there was no ref involvement, but I think it was just that one really bad call. Other than that, I think just looked really good. All right, FanDuel, we're going to do real quick, and then we're going to move over to run the Sims and run some Sims. FanDuel is a totally different game now than it was last year, which I think it's a better game, but I also wish they hadn't changed it because now it's just closer to DraftKings. And I really liked that it was different because I think kind of some people didn't account for the difference enough maybe. All right, I'm going to sort by ownership here. So ownership at MVP. Honestly, 18% JJ McCarthy at MVP on FanDuel seems a little bit better than the ownership on DraftKings, where it's half PPR here, so that the receptions don't hurt the quarterback as much. They're not losing out as much with the PPR scoring. So I think that's a okay ownership. I don't think either of the quarterbacks is like my favorite MVP play. I prefer Justin Jefferson at 11%, Drake London at 9%. Jordan Mason at 7%. Here's where, I said, I think when I wrote this up, I wrote it up as Aaron Jones as my third favorite captain play on DraftKings, Jordan Mason as my third favorite on FanDuel. Just, you get a lot of salary savings here with Jordan Mason. He's not as involved in the passing game, so the PPR doesn't matter as much. So I think those are the ones that stand out to me. It's Jefferson, London, Mason, these three right here. All look a little bit low owned, but I think you can get to Hawkinson at 3%. Mooney at 3%. I think those are fine plays. I actually hand built the lineup. I think I hand built the lineup where I put the Vikings defense at MVP. Now that I'm saying it, I maybe I didn't. Maybe I put them in the flex, but I think they're viable at MVP. 2% projected ownership there. They're actually more expensive than Jordan Mason, so I think most people would actually rather play Jordan Mason or any number of these, more exciting players than the defense around them. But I think that they're a fine play at 2%. Kyle Pitts, actually, if you want to just make a bet on Kyle Pitts taking a step forward this year, I think that's totally reasonable. He's not that expensive. He's not getting much ownership. I think he's a viable contrarian MVP option. I actually think the kickers are viable tonight at MVP. Jalen Naylor. I'm debating whether Thielen and Naylor. I think like in a 150 set, I would probably have a couple shares of a Naylor or a Thielen at MVP. But that's probably it. That's probably as low as I go here. But yeah, I particularly like Jefferson, London, Mason. Honestly, Jones is fine. Mooney looks pretty good, and then Pitts is actually one that I would in a 20 lineup set. I'd probably want at least one Kyle Pitts MVP in there as well. At flex, again, the quarterbacks get in a fair amount of ownership at flex. I think they probably should. I think that's it's half PPR. Quarterbacks look a little bit better. Bijan at 28.5%. That's actually lower than it was earlier. I think just slightly. He's one that I wrote up as I'll probably be underweight, just because he's so expensive. I'd love it if I get to more Bijan than I'm expecting, but I would anticipate that I'd be slightly underweight there. Mason at 28%. He's just 7,000. That's just too cheap for his role. He got 15 carries and a target last week in a game where the Vikings barely had the ball. Were not able to move the ball. If they can move the ball a little bit more, I think he could be a little bit more involved than he was last week. So I think he should be more than 7,000. I think 28% ownership feels pretty good on Mason. Love it on Drake London. He's only 10,200. That is quite the cost savings on Justin Jefferson. Honestly, maybe with the salary multiplier, Drake London might be the better MVP here. I don't know. Those two are my favorite, but Drake London is significantly cheaper than Justin Jefferson. I think they're both pretty strong plays. Hawkinson, 18.5% ownership looks good. I think I slightly prefer Hawkinson to Mooney. It really comes down to like how much is Mooney going to play here? Is he like back full time? Probably is. They probably wouldn't play him if they're too worried about the shoulder. So he's probably a full-time player here. I think both are, strong plays at 18% ownership. Again, Kyle Pitts, 16.5% looks good to me. Defenses, they look better here. So they're more expensive on FanDuel than DraftKings, but as a result, you get them at an ownership discount. Both look pretty good to me. 12% Jalen Naylor. I like that quite a bit. 10% Adam Thielen. I like that. All right. 1.5% Kadarius Hodge. I guess I should point that out as a play that I think is fine. I think I like it better on DraftKings than FanDuel because he's more expensive here. I think he's more expensive relative to the salary cap. These new prices kind of throw me off a little bit, like relative to some of the other players. Like he's only a little bit cheaper than Jalen Naylor. I like Naylor quite a bit better. So yeah, I think I like him better on DraftKings, but Kadarius Hodge viable on FanDuel also. All right. I'm going to take some questions if you have any. Otherwise, I'm going to run the Sims. Actually, I'm going to let the Sims run first, and then I'll take your questions. So again, when I start using Run the Sims, and if you want to check out Run the Sims, by the way, promo code Neil will get you 10% off your first payment of any of their packages. Their most expensive package, the one that I'm using here, is $300 a month is the base, and then you can get $30 off using promo code Neil, $30 off your first month. If you want to check it out. But then they have other options. They have an optimizer, and you're of course using the Utica projections here. So it's cool if you want to check it out. But how I'm going to use it, I'm not going to change any inputs before I run the Sims. I want to see what the Sims give me before I do anything. I am going to go into settings and make sure that they make sense for me. So I'm going to do 25,000 lineups for the first one. As Brian advised when he was on the show, I might be able to move that lower after the first run if I don't get to 25,000 lineups, but I'm going to do it for the first one. I'll do 10,000 Sims, and then I'm going to go top heavy payout structure. I'm going to use the Shady Portfolio Optimizer, and I'm playing 180 lineups across large field contests tonight. So I'm going to set it to 180 there. That's just going to diversify more my portfolio for me. So I'm going to get the highest EV portfolio rather than the highest EV 180 lineups. It's going to diversify my lineups for me so that they're not cannibalizing each other. And then I'm going to click Sim Runner Pro. All right, so I wanted to get that going. Now I can check in on chat. All right, I'm going to get rid of the bot, which I realize that my mods have probably already gotten rid of for you. All right. Thank you, Dan, for the reminder. Yeah, please do like the video. Would very much appreciate it. Trying to grow the channel, trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. We've got a ways to go. We're getting close to 5,000. I'm pretty hopeful that I can get to 5,000 sometime in the next week or so. I don't know. I haven't said I'm going to do any kind of giveaway. My wife asked me if I'm going to. I'm going to have to think about if I have any ideas for a giveaway when I get to 5,000. Would absolutely love to if I can think of something. Maybe a hack giveaway. I don't know. We'll see. Favorite captain, Justin Jefferson. If you only had to pick one between Bijan or London, I'm guessing London. Yeah, I think London for me. Favorite captain on FanDuel, Justin Jefferson. Drake London not far behind due to the price savings. MVP for a single lineup again, I think Justin Jefferson. I think he was like, I made a few hand-built lineups, and the first lineup I did was Justin Jefferson. Highest projection for 200. Mooney getting jammed by, I mean, he's projected for fairly low ownership. I'm probably going to bring it down a little bit. Highest projection for 200. I'll take a look at that on. Actually, I don't know if I can close this window, if that's going to screw up the Sims. So I actually don't want to look here. I will look on my end on another screen. I'm trying to think who it would be. I can't remember who's 200 exactly. All right. DraftKings. Salary. Oops. So highest projection for 200. Man, it's gross. There's not much at 200. No, I got it. Casey Washington is in here for some reason. He shouldn't be. The place that I'm looking, but he's projected for 0.2. I guess it would be Xavier Scott. Is he active? Or Tim Jones? If I were going to play one at 200, it would probably be or Miles Price. Actually, maybe correlate it with the Vikings defense. If you're playing the Vikings defense, maybe it'd be Miles Price. Otherwise, I guess Tim Jones. But it's not a great night for playing 200. Okay, he is active. I'm not expecting them to use a third running back, but I guess that's who you'd go to. Both kickers or both defenses on FanDuel, large GPP. I think both are viable. Probably both kickers. Good luck, Jimmy. Yeah, you absolutely can, with one of them in the captain spot, still play the other Vikings running back. Yeah, Pete said Tim Jones. Did pretty well today, Harpy. Actually, let me fact check myself on that. I was doing well at the time this show started. Oh, all right. Brian just told me that they actually have, and I probably should have known this. They have FanDuel at Run the Sims. I actually did know that. I just I'm not going to run the Sims, so I just looked elsewhere. But yeah, that is worth noting that you can, because I did it for the main slate. So yeah, I knew that they have FanDuel. Did not know that they have Yahoo. All right, let's look at how I did today. So last I looked, I was down about $50 on DraftKings. Did it get worse? Got a little bit worse. I ended up losing $70 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, last I looked, I was up $455. Yeah, and I finished. I made $455. So I was a profitable day overall for me. I finished 78th. I played 60 lineups in the FanDuel $15 milli. Finished 78th with one of them out of 150,000 lineups there. So that kind of made $250 on that one. Yeah, overall pretty happy with the day. A lot of the game environments that I was in on did pretty well. I had a lot of Goff. Liked the idea of a bounce back for the Lions, so I played a fair amount of Goff. I really liked the Dallas double with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. It kind of got there in the end. I wish that I had more of full game stacks that included Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Neighbors, obviously. Like that would have been awesome. I don't think I had any of those. I don't think I had a lot of like James Cook. Don't even think I had a ton of Romo Dunze, who I talked him up, at least on one show as somebody that I kind of liked. Wasn't like a huge thing for me, but like seemed a little bit inexpensive. I don't know. I had some hits, some misses. I'm going to be paying close attention to my eliminator lineups. Wanna get at least 50% of those through this week. Hopefully more than 50%, but some things did not go well for me. As somebody who plays a lot of elite quarterbacks in the eliminator, wasn't ideal having multiple quarterbacks getting hurt. When I go to advanced settings and make it to where a running back had to be in the captain spot, the Sims is not giving me any lineups. Are you doing that before or after you run the Sims? Because you can do it both ways. You can set it before you run the Sims, or you can set it after you run the Sims. Is it possible that did you not run that many lineups? So it maybe didn't give you any with a running back and the captain. I don't know. That's tough to troubleshoot, but I would maybe just try again running with more lineups and do the filtering after the fact. I think that's okay. You did do it after the fact. I mean, are you in the Run the Sims Discord? Maybe run that by somebody there, because I have not come across that, but they might have a good idea for what's going on. Sorry to hear that, Devin. But that's like not even that much. Like I've lost more than that, many weekends. Maybe not most weekends, because for most of my DFS career, I was not playing super high stakes. That'd be more than I'm playing, but that happens. Oh yeah, maybe that it was negative EV. I'm not sure. Would you be okay with London JJ captain without their quarterbacks? Yeah, absolutely. The quarterbacks are fairly expensive. Certainly plausible that they get a lot of their scoring through PPR, getting the 100-yard bonus, which those are things that don't do anything for the quarterback. So yeah, you can definitely play the elite and any receivers without their quarterback in the captain spot. Single entry FanDuel captain and opposite team flex. Are you asking for suggestions? I mean, you could just do Drake London, FanDuel MVP, Justin Jefferson in the flex. I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question. All right, we're at diversifying payouts. It's with the shady portfolio optimizer now. I'll take these lineups out, put them into DraftKings just to make sure that I have something, and then I'm going to do another run after I make some changes. All right, so you can see it only made 5,900 lineups, so I can do fewer lineups in the next run, which is nice. That'll save me some time. You can see my top lineup here by EV is JJ McCarthy, mega stacked. It actually has Tim Jones in there with Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Tim Jones, and Will Reichard. I'm going to see how much Tim Jones I got, because I don't think I want that much. Second lineup, I've got Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, Michael Penix, Parker Romo, Jordan Mason. You can see very, very different lineups at the top here. But then back to JJ McCarthy with Justin Jefferson and Tim Jones. We've got Jordan Mason in that one. Yeah, it looks like it's giving me more Tim Jones than I'm going to want. So I'm going to adjust that. First, I'm going to just take these lineups out. Want to make sure that I get some lineups. And I have until 8:20 Eastern, right? So this is not like I'm not in a time crunch yet. But I want to make sure I get lineups in before I screw around with things too much. So I'm just going to be copying and pasting lineups from Run the Sims into this spreadsheet. Did that work? There we go. All right. All right, give me a second here. moving things around in my spreadsheet a little bit. Just the order of the entries. Okay. All right, so I've got some lineups in there. Now we're cool. We can just do what we want to do. So I'm going to look at, now you can look at your player exposures right in Run the Sims, which is pretty important. Glad that they got that in there. So I am getting to 54% JJ McCarthy, 14% at captain of JJ McCarthy. You can see my exposures here because I'm using the Shady Portfolio Optimizer. This is going to be my exposures. I ran it for the exact number of lineups that I have. So I've got 54% JJ McCarthy, 68% overall. So I'm right in line with their projected ownership. Penix, a little bit light there. I'm getting to a lot of Justin Jefferson, praise be. Bijan Robinson, I am a little bit over the field here, it looks like. So I'm getting to a lot of the studs, which is why I think, getting Tim Robinson, or not Tim Jones, as much as I am. Love Tim Robinson. 27% Drake London in the flex, 14% at captain. All right, I'm going to try to get to more of the Vikings running game, I think, in general. I want to see how much I'm getting to of. Okay, I'm getting 13% Tim Jones. He's at 5%. So he showed up a lot at the top, but I'm glad I'm not actually getting like a crazy high number of Tim Jones, because that would scare me a little bit. I'm getting to very little of the defenses. I think I'd like a little bit more of the defenses. Not getting to much Tyler Algier, I think, because they're projecting him for so much ownership here. I'm getting to a ton of Parker Romo and a fair amount of, where was he? Will Reichard. I saw him, and I think I was getting a lot. 46% Will Reichard. So it is giving me a lot of kickers, which I think is good. I think it should be giving me a lot of kickers. I'm guessing some of the changes that I make might bring those numbers down a little bit. But I am going to make some changes here, particularly to the passing games. So I'm going to go back to the inputs. I'm going to click Smart Adjust. I think I'm going to move down the overall rush rate of the Falcons. First of all, I'm going to move down Tyler Allgeier's ownership. I think it could get out of hand, but I'm kind of afraid to have that big of a fade on Tyler Algier, just because he is such a strong value. So I'm bringing down his ownership a little bit. I'm going to also bring down the rush rate, maybe. Yeah, I'm going to bring down the rush rate to 40%, but I'm also going to move up the pace of the game overall, under the assumption that the Vikings are able to move the game a little bit more. I'm going to increase the sack rate also, because I like the defense. Oh, not that high, because I think the defenses are pretty good here. Try 8.4%, see what that does. Drake London's already at a 31% receiving market share. How much is I getting to of Pitts? I'm realizing I need to be quick here. Got 13 minutes, but I'm going to run fewer lineups next time. 23% total of Pitts. So I increased the entire passing game, which I like. All right. I'm at 4%. I'm going to move Hodge market share up to 5%. I'm going to get rid of David Sills here. Don't think I need him. I'm going to get rid of Charlie Warner. I think I just want to focus on the guys that I actually want in my lineups. Going to move Pitts up a little bit. All right. Now I'm going to normalize. And then the Vikings, I think, again, they really struggled last week to move the ball. I think they could just be better. So I'm actually going to increase their points scored all the way up to 27. Homer alert. Yeah, I know. I'm a homer. It's fine. I'm going to move their pace up to 64 also. Or the rush rate, I'm going to move 52%. So I moved that up a little bit because I like both of the running backs. Oh, I didn't smart adjust. Shoot, I should have smart adjusted. But I can just reset the Vikings. Actually, I can do that. Let me reset the Vikings. All right, we're going to move it up to 27 points, 64 pace, rush rate up to 52%. Rush TD ratio. Oh, that's interesting. I can do that separately. Maybe let's leave that where it is. I like both Mason and Jones. I think I moved the rush. Maybe I want to move it up even more because I really like the running backs here. Thielen, I'm going to move up. Thielen and Naylor I like a little bit better. So I move the rush rate up. Oh, man, I don't want to get rid of Tim Jones completely. But I'm going to get rid of Ty Felton, Miles Price, Josh Oliver, Ben Urosek. And I'm going to move up Naylor, Thielen. All right. I'm going to click. And I didn't click Smart Adjust again. That was the whole reason. Well, I don't have time now. I'm going to click Normalize. Okay. Shoot. Okay. Don't have time to do it now, I don't think. I might have more time because I'm going to run fewer lineups. And then I'm going to move up the Viking sack rate to 9% and see if that gets me more. All right, let's try running now. I'm going to go to settings, move it down from number of lineups 25,000 to 10,000. And now I'm just going to run it. So that should be a little bit quicker now because I'm running fewer lineups. Right, let me get rid of the bots again. I got to remember to do that to require that you subscribe because they're so obnoxious. I can't see anything that anybody's saying because of the bots. So give me a second here. Happy to do it. Really appreciate you guys hanging out with me before lock as I'm running my lineups. Really appreciate you being here. Devin fading Bajan. We'll see if I'm fading Bajan. Guessing this is going to be my final run, but we'll see if it's quick enough with fewer lineups here to maybe do one more. I think it's unlikely. They are getting quicker. I know it's something that the team is focusing on. Already calculating payouts, that's a good sign. But the exposures tab was pretty important to me. Nice, Carlos. Used the Sims today, found some small success. It's good to hear. Me too. Yeah, I had a profitable day overall, slightly negative on DraftKings, but then one more on FanDuel. So happy with that. Calculating payouts. All right, let's go. Let's go. No, get out of here, Chris. Candyman. What would be the revenge for Penix? What am I forgetting here? Why would it be a Penix revenge game? Did we beat Penix last year? Oh, the Natty. Oh, to JJ McCarthy. Oh, okay. Yeah, JJ's going to crush him tonight once again. Shows you how little I know about college football. Yeah, I might be going out after this. I actually don't know. I talked about going out with some friends for this game, but then the one who has a projector that we went to last week is going to the game now, got tickets to the game. So up in the air if I'm going out to have a cold one after this. I'm always so tired on Sundays that I'm like, can I really drink a beer while I'm doing this? I got to get through the show and then I can go enjoy a beer after. But no, I'm doing well. Yesterday was my 6-year wedding anniversary. All right, here we go. Going to download these and then take a look at exposures. The wife and I went out. It was fun. Oh, and I think I have to. Hang on a second. This is my DraftKings. No, this is my Run the Sims. Okay. I'm going to re-download that. Okay. I probably shouldn't even try to do another one because I definitely won't have time to look through it. But let's take a look at the exposure. So top lineup now: Kyle Pitts at captain with Bajan, Drake London, Jordan Mason, Kadero Hodge, and Michael Penix. Want to make sure that I'm not getting to anything too crazy. Justin Jefferson now in the second lineup with JJ McCarthy, Jalen Naylor, TJ Hawkinson, Tim Jones in there again. I hope I'm not getting to a crazy amount of Tim Jones. Let me look. So I'm getting to a lot of JJ McCarthy, a lot of Michael Penix. I did up my Jordan Mason exposure, actually brought down my Justin Jefferson, which I don't love, but I increased the rush rate, so that kind of makes sense. Still getting to a lot of Bajan. Kind of came down on my Aaron Jones. More Kyle Pitts after increasing his route participation. I'm down, like the amount that I'm getting of the kickers decreased pretty significantly here. I'm still at 10.5% Tim Jones. And I have 1% Ty Felton. That's interesting. 22% Kadero Hodge now. So maybe I increased him a little bit too much. I'm only getting to 1% of the Falcons defense, 14% of the Vikings defense. Might want more of the defenses there. So I think maybe I increased Kadero Hodge just a little bit too much. I think I am generally happier with these exposures than the last ones. I'm getting to more of the defenses, which I like. Probably don't have time to run another sim here, but I'm going to try real quick anyway. So I'm going to, because I'm not getting much, I'm going to move the Falcons sack rate up to 9%. Going to move Bijan, move the rush rate down even a little bit more, I think. I move Hodge up just a little bit and got a ton. Maybe I'm fine with that. Tim Jones projected for 1 fantasy point, and I got so much. But that's because he's projected for 0 ownership. So if I move that to 1%, move Felton to 1%, 0.3% Felton maybe. Just give them any kind of ownership. I wonder if that'll change anything. Going to move the Vikings up even more in sack rate. And I got to a ton of Kadero Hodge, which I guess I'm okay with that. All right, I'm gonna try one more time. I don't think I have time to do this sim now. But just for the fun of it, giving me something to do. Thanks for the reminder, Dan. Yeah, please do like the video if you haven't done so. And of course, subscribe to the channel. Hoping to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. Good luck to you as well, Candyman. London and Hodge or Mason and Vikings defense to pair with Jefferson, McCarthy, Pitts, and Reichard. With that combo, probably, it's probably Mason and Vikings defense for me more generally. It's close though. I like both those combos. You need Jesus. Guessing that's about my running lineup still. When selecting lineups, do we want a higher 0.1%? I'm not sure. Oh, like top. Yeah, yeah. That's like finishing in the top 0.1%. Yeah, higher is generally going to be better. But mostly you just want like the highest expected ROI or EV. All right. Yeah. Did not not going to get this one in. I am tied with this guy, and I have Herbert and Evans left. He has Dicker, and yeah, you're good. Chargers. Oh, and Hampton. Dicker on the Chargers. Oh, Dicker and Hampton. Herbert and Evans. I like your side of that, definitely. Way better. All right, we're not getting this lineup in. This set of Sims in. I knew that. I knew I wasn't getting him, but wanted to try it just to see what it looked like. Algier and Jones or Romo and Mason. I would go Romo and Mason there. All right. Well, I guess I can start closing this up because we're not getting these lineups in. Appreciate all of you. Of course, I'll be back tomorrow for the 2-game slate. We're getting 2 games on Monday night. That should be a lot of fun. Hopefully, you'll join me for that as well. Thanks, guys. Please do like the video, and of course, go Vikings. Skol. Oh, I didn't hit the button. All right, I'm gonna hit it now.